Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? This is your coach Renz, and today I'm going to take you on a journey of one of my favorite books of all time. It is called The Richest Man in Babylon. I discovered this book in 1990. Right, and I've read this book probably 1,000 times, and I've implemented lessons from this book throughout my life, and I'm implementing one of those lessons right now. And that lesson that I'm implementing, I want to share with you guys. Now, 4 months ago, I talked about the men who desired gold from the richest man in Babylon, and how they went out and they got a coach from Akkad, who was the richest man in Babylon. And I was thinking I was going to tell you the story of Akkad, but not yet, because I think that most people are finding themselves in similar situations to the one that I deal with and that most people deal with, which is, how do I come out of debt and build wealth at the same time? How do I face my creditors? How do I face my life and find peace and happiness while I'm in this process? And there's a story, the next to the last story, tells you how to do that, and it's the story of the camel trader, and the guy's name is Dabasir. Now, the beauty of it is that an accompaniment with the story is letters written by a professor, Franklin Caldwell, who translated the tablets for a friend of his in America, and utilized that information himself to be able to bring his family out of debt, build wealth at the same time, and find peace. So here we go. Dabasir was a camel trader in Babylon. He was in such debt that he had to send his wife back home to her father so that he can relieve some of the pressure. And he was so embarrassed and so ashamed that he sent his wife back. And that's horrible back in their time frame. You didn't do that kind of thing as a man. So he did that. But at the same time, he said, ooh, I got this get rich quick scheme. I got to go to Syria to handle this get rich quick, and I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna make all this money, and then I'm gonna be able to handle everything. Now, oftentimes when we find ourselves in overwhelming debt, we are easy targets for get rich quick schemes and ideas, because we think, oh, here's a low risk opportunity that I can run off and I can make all this money and I can free myself from all this debt. But one of the problems is that you still got a debt mind, and so even if you did make the money, you're gonna lose the money because your mind is already cultivated for debt. So even when he went off to Syria with this mindset of this get rich quick, he found himself set upon by bandits, and then the bandits took his butt and sold that joker into slavery, right? So his debt situation became worse because now he's a slave. And oftentimes if we run at something, and one of the rules of gold is that gold doesn't respond to impossible earnings. So he ran off, got caught up. Now he's into this more. He's not prison, but he's enslaved. But while he's enslaved, he just happens to be a slave to a woman who can see into his soul, see his spirit. And she recognized that he has the spirit of a free man, but he has the mind of a slave, right? And he has a mind of a slave because he has a mind of debt. Now, if you have a mind that is in debt, then you have a mind of a slave because you're a slave to debt. Like, you gotta have, if you don't understand liabilities and expenses, and if you have more liabilities and assets, and you have more liabilities than you have assets, you have more outgo than you have income, then you have a problem. You have a mental problem, not a number problem. I have trained many people and worked with people who actually make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and they are still in debt. I know people who are millionaires and they are still in severe debt. So, and it's not that debt is evil, but you have to learn how to use debt to your benefit. And most people don't, which is why we're in a debt economy and we suffer as much as we do. And this economy suffers as much as it does. So he finds himself in that situation. Now, after years of working and talking with the lady, his slave owner, lady, mistress, she then sets him up on a situation where he can escape. Now, that escape takes a risk of his life. Your escape from debt will take a risk of your finances, because you will have to do something that is uncommon to everybody else. And then when he did do that, he got home, he made it to Babylon. So if you do it, you will survive. Understand, recovery is for you to have. So he escaped, he gets to Babylon, right? Now when he gets there, he now has to face his debtors, right? So before, he forgot everything and ran. Now he has to face everything and respond. All right, you saw my video yesterday and you shared it, you'll know what I'm talking about. So share this one too. So he has to face everything and respond. So he calls up each one of his debtors. Now,
I'm going to tell you a little personal one right here. When I first got stationed in Stuttgart, Germany, I was up to my eyeballs in debt, right? So was thinking about this story, and I did the exact same thing that this guy did, but I'm going to tell you his story in my version. So what I did was I called up all my debtors, every last one of them. I only had about 10 back then, but when you're only making like, $2,000 a month, 10 is a lot. So I called up each one of my debtors and I said, hey, here's the deal. 20% of what I make, I'm going to spread evenly over to each one of you guys. And for some of you, it's more than than the minimum payment. For others, it's right there at the minimum payment, but I'm going to spread it. Of course, some of them yelled at me and they cursed me out and they was like, you owe me extra amount of money. You're going to pay me and I want all my money now. I don't care about the other people. And I said, I understand that and I can appreciate your thoughts, but this is what I'm going to do. 20% will go towards that. And then I said, and then it was like, well, you got more money. I said, well, no, 10% is going to go towards me building my financial independence, whereas the other 70% is how me and my wife are going to live our lives. We have to eat, food, clothing, shelter, that sort of thing. So I expressed this to everybody. They didn't all like it, but I didn't care. Click, click. Now, what happens is, over the course of the years, I'm doing this. Once I pay someone off, I call everybody up again. I say, well, this is how much money I'm making now, and this is the new 20%, and these are the only people I owe debt to, so now your amount is going to increase. By this time, they're all happy now because they've been getting, they'll be like, okay, great, good, you've been doing great. So I didn't have a problem with them. Same thing with Dabasir. The same thing with Professor Franklin Caldwell. Their debtors became easier to deal with because they've been getting that payment. But it's amazing because it took Professor Caldwell 2 years to pay off all his debt. It took me exactly 2 years to pay off all my debt. And the next thing I know, because I was paying off my debt and with the 20%, then I was saving 10%, and I used that 10% to invest wisely into income-based investments, not stocks, not bonds, income-based investments. While in Germany, I invested in a guy who was doing the 3-on-3 tournaments, and he was making money, so I made some money with him. I invested with a guy who had a dance troupe. I made money with him. I invested with a guy who had a cleaning company. I made money with him. So I invested my 10% with people who were making money so that I can make more money, which allowed me to pay the debt off faster. You see, that was the trick. That was the way it worked. And then that 70%, we learned to get along and live with that 70%. And then as we made more money, that 70% grew. So we was able to go and do more things, to travel. I mean, we saw all over Europe and go do and buy all kind of things that we just desired to have in our lives and have experiences that we wanted to have. And guess what? The biggest thing is that during the process, there was freedom and peace, because every time I sent off those payments, I knew that I wouldn't get a bunch of calls. Every time those payments hit, I knew that it was drawing down the money. We still had money to invest. We had a little jingle in our pocket. We still lived our lives and we had a good time. We found ways of appreciating every day. So you can take this story. So it's basic. 20% to pay off your debt, 10% to increase your wealth, and live off the 70%. To some of y'all, you're just thinking, I can't do that, but you can make it happen. There is a way. I believe that you can. But don't forget, come get your free coaching session, and that's one of the things we can talk about. So my greatness is non-negotiable, and so is yours. And contact me today. Let's get started. Become Dabasir and become free.